Buenos días desde México.
Good morning from Mexico. We say hi to the Marist who are connecting for this meeting that is online. In our new meeting for the Global Marist School meeting. So I'm glad that we have all these participants from different schools of the world, especially Father Daniel Villanueva, who will give us this presentation of prophetic networks for the mission. He has studied in the Boston College, and he studied also in the University of Georgetown in administration. He has a postgrad in innovation of NGOs. He has specialized in an international Jesuit network and also education and development. He's been working since 2008 in Entreculturas, which is an NGO. He's worked as a coordinator for the Department of Africa. And he's also been a Director General since 2008. He's been a Vice President of Entreculturas and the one responsible for cooperation of the Compañía de Jesús in Spain. Father Daniel recently has been named Global Director of Faith and Happiness, which is an association that associates different schools in the world. He's also part of the patronage of ESADE. It's an honor to have Father Daniel among us. We invite him to share his knowledge about prophetic networks for the mission. Please give him a round of applause. Great, so good morning, good afternoon, depending on what time you are watching us. I would like to thank for the invitation. It is a privilege to be in a group like this. We have shared many moments in these last days. We've talked. I was telling you that this meeting of NET is a historic event. It is a great honor. It's not just an idea or a proposal. I invite you to stop me if you want, so that you can take an idea with you clearly. So I've got some slides that I would like to show you. So you could stop my presentation to ask me questions. I want to talk in Spanish. And we also have the service of interpreters, so that you can understand me. But you can also look at the slides, which will help. If you have your own ideas, write them down, because what I want to do is to exercise my brain and feed it with good ideas, which is what building network is about. I would like to talk about the experience of the Compañía de Jesús, because I think it would help for the global network of schools. To begin with, simply, I think you all have seen this before. Maybe you have all signed up for an internet page, and there's always some questions like this one you can see. And there is this test that you have to pass. It's very difficult. It's called CAPTCHA, and it's meant to differentiate human beings from machines. In theory, a machine cannot read what it says, so if you can't read that, then I would get worried, because it's a Turing test to not accept robots, because we want humans. It was invented a few years ago, It was a great success, and many digital systems that require a human user use it. Nowadays, 200 captchas are filled per day. At the beginning, the team discovered that it takes a human 10 seconds to fill this test, so we are basically losing 500,000 hours per day. So they thought about how they should best use all that time that is being wasted, and there are many questions, so many answers that we seek to answer this question. How do you better use this time? Some people decided to make business with that potential. They said, well, maybe we'll put a logo and they should write the name of the brand. There was another team that used a very different, completely different logic. Now, instead of a word, we have two. Now, what's the trick? One of the words is the CAPTCHA word, the one we created to differentiate humans from robots, and the other one is one that a robot could not understand when scanning a book. So this system identifies who is a human, and then it asks you, what does this say? Because the machine could not understand this word when it was transforming a book into a digital one. So if you answer morning, then the machine knows that you answered correctly, and so this is how thousands of words are being digitalized. So this helps with the digitalization of books, thousands of them per day. This is the magic of massive collaboration online. Just a small change, a good idea, can do a lot of good using something that we were wasting. This is a very big example. Now let's do another one. This woman is called Kasuno. She's a good friend. I knew her in 2006. I met her in Kenya in a camp of refugees. She fled her country with her son. I don't know how she did it, but she arrived to the northwest of Kenya. When I met her, she had already been 12 years in that camp. We know that 15,000 people are very difficult to keep in a place. There were people that had been there for 18 years. Imagine a child, a boy that was 18 years old, and they hadn't met anything else, any other reality beyond the camp. So something that I found wonderful was this small living room of informatics. It had a telephone connection, and we tried to allow people to study and get them some diplomas. The fact that they were studying was amazing because they were using their time to study. Now, the Jesuit service that focuses on refugees was beginning to explore an alliance with different universities that knew a lot about education online. So from those conversations, a program called Jesuit Worldwide Learning was created, one that employs new structures. So there are two different works working together, in this case in the refugee camp. and they created a service that no one else had been giving. Why? Because people understood the context. The network of university becomes stronger and they start giving education for vulnerable people, which is very new for the Company of Jesus, or Compañía de Jesús. This is an example that I give you because for me it represents the possibilities for the mission when we explore different collaborations. Thank you to Nissan, that was the name of the university that helped with whom we were making an alliance. Well, I'm going to use some of their images. For example, I don't know if you know who he is. In the Jesuit world, we all know him, Father Arube. He was the general father for the Compañía de Jesús. And I show you because he changed it forever. He changed the Society of Jesus forever. I would have not become a Jesuit was it not for him. So he was visiting South Asia one day, and he had a program of the boat people. I don't know if you know it, but it was the first human emergency known in different social media in the 70s. So Vietnam, the people from Vietnam were fleeing to international waters, expecting to be saved. It was a new problem that lacked a solution. So the Jesuits had been working in different countries with refugees and migrants, but there was no coordinated answer. So Father Arofa saw this problem and he sent a telegram. Imagine how difficult this would have been. This madman that says, send a telegram to all the provincials of the world that says, this emergency requires our coordinated response. And as a response of this telegram, there was such a big answer that the Jesuit Service for Refugees was created. And it works with a network to coordinate, in a coordinated way, answer to different complications, and it works with social media. This is an example that, to me, shows us the great possibilities that collaborative action has. So, let us return CAPTCHA, Kazungu, and JRS. Now, it is your turn to answer. Some of you have been sleeping, but what do these examples have in common? I want all of you to answer. The first one can say whatever, but the next answers have to be serious. So if you see a common pattern in these three examples, tell me. An intuition worked him. A significant change, working in network, opportunity to dare, an answer to a necessity. Always people, right? Small individual actions that make great changes possible. More ideas. Passion. Yes, I think it has passion. That constructs on the desire of different people that connect together. A coordinated answer. Creativity, which is something new. Yes, there's always something new, a new idea, a new creative idea. What else? And the three examples there are is communication and technology. Why is this world being born? Because before there was not this connection. It's not that people were stupid, but the possibilities were not there. There was no possibility to answer in this manner. I don't know if someone else wants to participate. Bravery, daring, humanity behind it. The government is not their leader. Well, we could debate that too. But yes, it comes from the people.
É uma resposta da base, não é uma resposta de cima do governo, de quem se direciona.
There is sensitivity to give an answer. So I did not write this down, but I have some ideas. So they're giving an answer to a necessity that before was impossible to answer. There is creativity, connectivity, which allows this to be possible. There is sensibility. And the second idea. These are ideas that are based on a mission. There's a bit of passion or vocation, but the people are in the center. There's always humanity behind it. Third, this has not come up, but these are strategies on the long run. This is very important because sometimes we think, oh, it's so cool that all those people that create the recapture, but these are ways to place your brands. Or that's great that the North American schools are giving education to schools, but they are profiting from it. And for me, this is a motivation, but there's always a profit. So this is not people working because of the generosity of their hearts. And now this is the one I like the most. They are using resources that do not need new institutions. This is very important, especially nowadays. Today, the times that the church is passing through, and later I'll tell you more about this. But one of the main things about working in network is that in a way, we are changing our institutions instead of creating new. And that's an advantage. That's why it's very important. So I'll show you a Twitter symbol every time we get to a part that I think it's not something I tweeted, but we should keep in mind this. So this is to tell you that collaboration expands the possibilities of our mission. That would be the title of what I want to show you today. I don't know if you know the strength of this, but it means that probably there are unexplored waters in creativity that a group like this is exploring. So before, people wouldn't think that education in refugee camps had a future, and now there are hundreds of initiatives trying to enter that market, if you want to call it like that, like a market. Today is very important. There are untapped resources here. This is why it's very important. So this is not something to do with technology. It's not about freaks of the technology. I'm here to, when I tell them that I'm here to talk about network, they often think I'm going to talk about social media, but that's not really the case. Often the limit is our own imagination. It is our creativity which gives us the key to face these problems. So this is the first stop I would like to stop in. So the telegram, again, it is very important. Arupe arrived and had a vision to say there is a calling here, one that can only be answered in a collaborative way. If this was a workshop, I would stop and ask you to think, what telegram would you write? What necessity are you seeing in your vision, one that can only be answered with collaboration? If you could write a telegram for everyone that works for you, so that you can solve it, what would you write? That is the importance of this telegram. It is the catalyst for a collective answer. And I'm going to bring up the telegram more times in the future, so keep that in mind. We have all seen the war in Ukraine. It has given us a lot of work. In the Society of Jesus, we have a network called Javier that it works with different missions around the world. Now, I would like you to see that the 24th of February, on that very night when the war started, from the emergency unity, we contacted Ukraine, the Jesuits of Ukraine, and the surrounding countries, asking what was their situation and what they were going to do. And the next day, we had a meeting with Javier, the network. And on the third day, we had a meeting with Rome, coordinating what we were going to do. And so 3 days took us to have a leader. And then we also had a global network, humanitarian network of the Society of Jesus. This had never happened before. I'm not showing this because to show how great we are, but it is important because it happened so very fast. To get here, I'm going to tell you just that this result took years and years of work, working with different humanitarian emergencies. I'll list some of the ones that we have been working with, and in some of them we made horrible mistakes. There was a lot of tensions in some of these emergencies, in which we don't really know what we should do, who should we write the mail, who has any duties of authority. All these details, like why should we send money here and not there, who's going to take charge of all this. There is a chaos that makes coordination very, very difficult. So after years of working in that trial and error, we now have developed protocols of emergency, and we have different orders and different institutions that allow us to act fast. So I know that if I go to bed and I haven't sent a mail, I have failed my mission, and to get to that level of detail is part of constant work. Now, in 2015, there was an earthquake in Nepal. We activated all the emergency programs, all the company, all the Society of Jesus went to help there. And this allowed us that 6 years after, we created Fe y Alegría in Nepal. That's faith and happiness. So we created a network of schools after 6 years of having helped in the earthquake. So to do this, we needed strengthening an international network, an institutional network. And this is something that we haven't experienced before. And this is just a result of years of work. One network is for the humanitarian response and the other one is dedicated to education. But again, this takes years. This is a very important example. Because we must know what we want to work together to solve.
A mis necesidades.
Beyond just solving my own necessities. This is just the introduction to understand why this work is important. In the launch of the Marist network of schools, we've already talked about the importance of working in networks. In the Jesuit world, we see, well, it's a little bit abstract, but we imagine the Trinity looking over the world. We say the world, whether it be flat or round. But the idea was to remember that over the earth there's people that sleep, people that awake, people that laugh, people that cry, people that's black, others that are white. But at the end, they consider the world as a whole. Our Father is looking at us, and we need to do our best to satisfy Him with our work. This is the concept of the mission we do. There are a lot of topics that define our identity that are in our DNA and have to do with the route God's defined for us. The idea of the world being our home. At the beginning, one of the Jesuits was explaining what was the Society of Jesus, and he said that traveling is a way of staying home because the world is our home. All of these are elements of universality that I think are useful to share with you. I saw the phrase, all the dioceses of the world are in our sight. That's a Champagnat phrase that is including this universal vision that to me it's fundamental for the mission we have. If we don't fight the idea, if we don't fight for this idea of universality, then we won't get too far. When we really understand that we are here to work for the world as a whole, as a Marist family, as a Catholic Church, only when we understand this will we be successful in our work. People who don't see this won't understand the advantages of working in a network because they're lacking a huge analysis of our reality. Another principle is that God dwells in creation. This is very basic. We don't take God with us when we are in our work. God's already there. He's just inviting us to join Him. This very simple idea allows us to be humble, facing the realities. This is very important. We see people like sons of God, just like me. This allows better understanding because I'll try to understand what is God trying to tell me in that reality. I'm not the one bringing the solution. I just need to listen to the addition of all of the essences and symbols that are presented in that reality, because in that reality God is speaking to me. That is a very important spiritual element. I believe it was Pepe who used the word feel. You used the word feel to remember what is so called as Marist family. That's very important, because beneath that it is the confidence of our work and the relationships we have among each other. We know that we're working together for this creation. This is very fundamental to understand the importance of our work in networks. Very quickly, I wanted to give you some examples. Since 1995, we understood the networks were very important for our progress. To a lot of people, this model was very new. In our institutional level, we understand that collaboration at a global level is important, because if we don't, then we are not taking advantage of every opportunity that's presented to us anywhere in the world. I didn't include it here, but in 1995, a congregation said, we need to collaborate in networks. We don't know how to, so let's make mistakes until we figure it out. Okay, we have Jesuit.network to map out the networks that are a part of Society of Jesus. There are a lot of networks. You might be familiar with some of them. Some are universities, some have social work, others in Church of Faith, others work in different regions. And in general, we're very good to have equality among networks in every region. We are very good at this because it is not as hard. We're not so good at organizing networks that mix, for example, universities with social work or with pastoral or in schools. We're not as good managing networks that have different objectives. That's one of our challenges. Those networks that have different objectives and those that take place in more than one region. Networks are the new thing. The church is not used to working like this. The first learning we had is that there is no universal solution for every problem. Right now, I just need you to understand that we're not creating networks to be more efficient. We're creating networks to fulfill our mission. We need to take advantage of the opportunities. These are some of our ideas. It isn't the same to make a project together or have a central secretariat or figuring the economy. Those are problems that can be solved through networks. This is an example of types of networks that we have studied in Society of Jesus, and each one of them has had been present in a pastoral meeting. What we want to do is to create a network, for example, of schools like Fe y Alegría, or if we want to create networks of political participation, then we get together. We've been working for many years. In 2008, we got together in Madrid and we invited every project of the social sector that in a way were interested in having political participation at a global level. And we got all of these volunteers. We took this picture. This was a long time ago. And what happened? We concluded that there were areas that would have greater impact with our participation: ecology, rights and education, natural resources, and migration, and forced migration. What we did was creating a network for each topic at an international level. EduJesuit trying to defend the right of education. And we collaborate with volunteer institutions. EcoJesuit tries to connect everyone trying to work for the ecology. And this way we can have a presence in United Nations meetings, because people working with us are in those circles. Justice and Mining, which is the network trying to protect natural resources. We're working with different ONGs, NGOs in Europe, trying to defend our natural resources from the biggest companies in the world. All of this exists as a simple call for everyone who's like to participate and work with us. As you can see, this is the structure of every network. What steps they're following to do their work. In 2015, we did a meeting with networks of the social sector once again. This allowed us, during the COVID crisis, to create a map of how COVID was affecting every educational institution. This wouldn't have been possible without the work of the networks that had already created connections and relationships. So, when all of the activities stopped, Rome had a dashboard to understand what was happening with the projects all around the world. This allowed us to have information to decide what actions we needed to take. This is another huge advantage that you can have working in networks. In higher education, if you can see all of the meetings, every single one of them has the word network or networking, because ever since 2010 we've trying to create collaboration, and we've been working like crazy ever since then to create this network of universities. They've tried many times to create collaborative platforms. This was a total failure. It was kind of like a Facebook for professors where they shared important topics. And you know why it failed? Because it was too soon. Some of the initiatives get launched when the context not ready to receive them, and they fail. Well, now that, which was called Jesuit Commons, now became Jesus Worldwide Learning, and it is working now. We waited for the right time, we relaunched it, and it is one of the biggest platforms we have. Jesuit Digital Network also failed. We wanted to create a space to gather educational information, and it failed. This one, Ignited, was very interesting. It was launched for business cases for business universities, business cases with different values. So maybe a project that worked very well to create initiatives within the universities to use our own examples, not taking examples from other universities, but projects that followed our ideals. Later, we created the International Association of Jesuit Universities, launched in 2018, so it's very new. We've just started working with this. And as you can see, it has its own strategy. And look at the topics: high education at the margins, civic political formation for the common good, educating and advocacy for economic environmental justice, peace and reconciliation. All of these are the topics that after a lot of work we've adopted. Because, and this is very important, because deciding what our goals are would guide all of our work. Those are the seeds of our job. What is this network doing? Well, they created ReconciliaNet to reconciliate, and it has created focal areas to work. It allows to have a dashboard of finding different initiatives all around the world. All of this is to promote visibility of the projects. I don't know if you can see all of the possibilities networks create for us. Then for secondary ed, this is the networks that have been more efficient in their work lately. First in 2012, that was our first meeting of the Jesuit schools. COVID is the one that probably stopped you from your labor, but I know you can recover as we did. This is another platform. We have Educate Matches that's trying to share different projects. Ever since this platform was created, every collaborative project that's launched by different schools can be published in this platform. I'm actually not in the educational area, I'm in the social area. But every project we have, we translate it into English and we post it here. We now have a platform for schools all around the world. And this turns the Red Chair, a campaign we created, to be present in around 12 presents with people that I don't even know. And then one day I look at Twitter and I see they're developing the same project as we are back in home. And this
And this allows to do something that would have been impossible a few years ago. Now, General's father has 6 challenges. This would have not been done before. Now, in 2017, the directives joined in Rio, and they decided on 5 challenges to do in different schools. And it was hard for me to believe this, that we were able to land the network work in different schools. And these schools have taken these challenges to face. And I'm always working with schools in all over the world, and they always have a map. They're all part of this global network. And there's always this framework of understanding with their own characteristics. But they have this we also have this common framework. This is something incredible. Had it not been for the network, it would have been impossible. So we think of the classic schools of the Jesuits, but I say we have 2 networks. Fe y Alegría is one of them. This means that not only are we working with different traditional schools, many of which are working with middle class or high class and very high class, but there are other networks in the education company that is working in frontiers, in borders, and we are able to join them and to bring them together. We launched the Jesuit Global Net of Colleges, and JRS is also included. So this has created teamwork and collaboration that before would have been impossible. We have all these schools working together, and we can see this map. And we not only have traditional schools, we also have Faith and Happiness and JRS. This is a network that integrates schools from different borders. It goes beyond borders, and this is very interesting because it opens up possibilities to integrate our work with other projects that maybe want to work in projects like this.
Idea.
So now there's some team focusing on a Jesuit World School. Now we're working with different services, and we have a team working in this concept. This would have been impossible without the help of the network. So these are some examples. We've also worked with dialogue of network work. Now this is something that people find difficult to understand, but we have a team that works about the teamwork. So this has allowed us to create a lot of knowledge about how the society is developing their projects. So in this web page, you can find all the services, so that all the other networks know what this is about, and they can maybe join. So this allows people to have information and make suggestions about it. Otherwise, there will be a lot of noise, but not concrete information. So I'll talk about the prophetic networks. I'm gonna go a bit faster because it's very conceptual, but I thought it would be important to mention too. So, when we try to define the network work, we say that it's a technical thing, it's a metaphor. We call it Jesuit network work. All that allows agencies to have, allows institutions to have their own agencies. That allows institutions to do something that alone would have not been able to. With this definition, is the one we allow people to understand. Networks are not structures for operation. They are opportunities to allow collaboration to happen. We don't look for McKinsey or experts in networks. We search how to best guide collaboration. The magic word is, what is that we want to do? That which we can only do together. That is a telegram. What is that we want to do and we can only do it together? There is this basic level of networking that, for instance, we have and good practices or learning together or internal solidarity, many things that we can do with networks. But the question is, how can we take this and create value? There are questions that may be more provocative. What is our next step as a network, as a global network of schools? What is the next thing, the next big leap? How can we take art to our sector, for instance, in secondary schools? What do we admire in other institutions? How can we get an advantage? How can we have a bigger impact? These are all questions that we could ask. Who can we make alliances with? From whom can we learn? These are all questions from the network work. These are all ideas that we can see in other levels. For instance, we also have the level, another basic level, that are things that we can do at an internal level, and then the things that I call the level of agency. This is the level that we dream of. This is the level that, in a way, is not intuitive. It's not that a bunch of friends work together and solve it, but it requires strategy. It requires a lot of talk. I think that today I would try to spread this idea of the telegram, identity and this sense of belonging. How can we tackle cross-cutting subjects? How can we answer complex questions? This is another level of a network that would be amazing to consider. I'm going to say it in another way. These last slides are the more conceptual part, but we would have a basic level in the network which focuses in our capacities, our services, economies, scale. This is great. But there would be another level that is a new level of agency. It's not about using our resources in a better way, but it would be about creating new areas of mission and new ways of working that will give value. How can we pass from a group, in our case, a group of schools, to a network of schools that work as an actor, that in a way creates dialogue, proposes, acts strategically, that grows? And that is a completely different leap. The kind of questions are others with whom we establish alliances is fundamental. Alliances and relationships. How does Champagne Global want to participate? How do we want people to know us? What can we say together? These are all key questions. How are we going to work as a network? How are we going to grow? What are we going to spread? How are we going to use our resources? What decisions will we make? These are the questions at this level of new level of agency. And depending on the answers, we are going to use it as a catalyst for our work. And when we say that we are a network, we cannot ignore that if we don't answer these questions, we are just playing as amateurs. Because at this level, these questions are the ones that truly need a solution. And also on an institutional level, that is the institutes that are part of this network that are open to new ideas and new kinds of organizations. This creates a problem of governance. This is integrated because it's integrated to our religious organization. Now, why do I call this network prophetic? Because at the end, they open us to what could happen. They allow us to see the real possibilities for our body of institutions, what we can do and we could become, and that's what prophets have done in history. They tell us where we're going or where we could be going. This is what these networks allow us to do. This is all written down. I don't want to go into detail, but the prophetic networks are structures that are guided by the mission. So every time that you have doubts, mission is more important than the structure. We can never allow structures to tell us what we can or cannot do. We have to ask ourselves what our calling are or is, and then structure follows. The mission always go first. It is a structure often that decides our actions, but this should not be the case. These are networks that allow, in a way, to channel the mission in a new way. This is why communication is important. One of the main strengths of the network is that when I'm part of something bigger, I understand myself in a different way. There is an identification that is amazing. And I use this often as a communicator. Our work together also shapes our work as individuals. This is very important, and we all try to understand ourselves. We are searching for ourselves, and often it's these networks, this group of networks, what allows us to finally understand ourselves. Third, diversity and inclusion. Often networks can be dangerous because they are homogeneous. They may want to make all the schools all the same, and we should not centralize, but to put the mission in the center. So what's different? We have to compensate the work of the network with subsidiarity. What this means is that problems and actions must be solved, and always in the closer area of the problem or the person that has a problem. This is fundamental, because otherwise these are just new spaces of colonization or new spaces of imperialism given by technology or resources, because the danger is in we opening channels where power is being given in a different way. So innovation and inclusion are very important aspects. We should open ourselves to others. This is a space of learning. A very big temptation is that network should become an internal service that does not allow us to receive others. Especially in this world where we have innovation, networks should help us to learn from them by speaking to them. So it would be a mistake us to not be open to innovation and be not open.
Sí, como decíamos antes, ¿no? La red.
So participation is not negotiable. This should happen. This is how we contribute truly. The networks should give us new levels of agency. Otherwise, there is no sense to the network, or it would have no sense without the people working in it. It's a great temptation to transform them into institutions. This is a mistake, a very big one that happens at the beginning. There is this tension that we should tackle. The agency is what the schools have, and the network serves that agency. It should not replace it. This brings different kinds of governance. I call it the curling model. I always say that we try to open the path, or let's try to guide to a better place, but the one that goes in front is not the one being leader. They are simply clearing the way a little bit. So I'm going to go very fast on these last slides. They asked me, what is a Jesuit network? Well, it's a network that is connected with our governance and that adds value to the mission. This is the criteria that we should follow. And this is what I use also. What's a prophetic network? Well, I have a very fast checkup. First, we have having it helps us to have people that feel like they're inside a family. They understand communion, for instance, in this case, the Marist family. It helps us to create spaces for participation and create a mission. It includes the whole world. Anyone could be part of that creation. Yes, well, then it's part of a prophetic network. Now, third, it tells us that we have a role in this implementation, and that novelty comes because we work in projects where we are working all together, we are working as a collective. Yes, well, if we have these three characteristics, then we are in a direction that is great for the kind of network that we want, we dream of as church. Here you have Fe y Alegría, Faith and Happiness. We are a network in 22 countries, and this is our strategic plan. We can see all the assembly in the countries that are working together. And the strategic plan are the fruits of the tree, which would be the network that we have created, similar to the ones that you are creating. And we created it through questions, and we created 17 global initiatives that people can join, anyone who wants to. For instance, CEPAL has a lot of them, which is a Jesuit organization in Latin America. And the way CEPAL works has no apartments now, but it's connected to the networks, and this changes how we work. This is just an example of how we can organize the networks. I'm going to skip this, I'm going to return back to it later. But we also have a lack of clarity. After many years of work, I would tell you that the biggest obstacle for the network work is a confusing purpose and a lack of clarity. Why are we doing all this work? It's not always clear what our universal vocation is, but at the end of the day, it is the lack of purpose. Sometimes there are no resources, sometimes there's a lack of leadership, but generally we have also a lack of clarity. Dangers we can't ignore. We have power and influence and ignoring the dynamics, not wanting to work in network. At the end is a danger because it's happening whether we want it or not. This is why the Marist initiative I like, because you are taking leadership of a dynamic that was going to happen anyway, and you are leading it, and that's amazing.
It says that the question is not whether our structures are good, but whether they are the best for our mission, and that's one of the biggest challenges. The first lesson we learned, and I've heard many of you mention this, well, how can I put it? The question about structures is key for identifying our mission. This is difficult to understand, especially for the people that tend to be at the top, because our vision is very technical, when the understructure is the one that allows the existence of those projects. So I say, well, the connections we're creating and the networks we're launching will allow the Marist work of the future. So we are right now structuring the body to morph one way or the other to help our mission. The future of our apostolical map depends on the creative ways we work today. I've heard many of you talking about the hierarchy and networks. It is very important to understand that although there is a hierarchy, it is very important to take into consideration every part of the body. Being with you for just these days, I've already realized which one of you is in charge of almost everything. There are different ways to look at reality relating to networks, and that's very important to understand. For us, it's very important to know that the coordinator is also in charge of the mission. Now, a network that's not connected to the people and the coordination is dangerous. Why? Because these networks are our future. I said a few years ago in Rome, have you realized that when coordination arrives, we've already decided on everything? We've already decided what will be our funding, the projects for the next 10 years. And when coordination arrives, everything's already decided. Why? Because institutions work faster, and these networks allowed to work better. We need to be connected with our coordination, to include them, to be a part of them, and to allow them to be a part of us, because they're in charge of our mission. Because right there is where we exercise our responsibility. How are networks governed? Well, the way I just said, we include them, they include us. Networks, of course, allowed collaboration, and having global priorities also allows the work within a network. Not every subject calls for the same level of collaboration. For us, education and social activities are the two topics that interest our people the most. I don't know if that's intuitive, but we've realized that these two topics call for collaboration more than any other topics. And in the collaboration they generate, we found subtopics: global citizenship, ecology, forced migration. These are topics that every sector is interested on. if I was a general, then I'd pay a lot of attention to this because I have a lot of people working in these topics. We need technological platforms to promote collaboration. Meetings are not enough. Another learning in our area and of course in yours is what's the role of alumni? Because it is very important to understand what the role they have. That's your main interest. And this one, that's a very important learning in our secondary network. We got together. Then in 2014, we met in a seminary to talk about educational topics. And 2017, we organized a congress to create a common project. So, colloquium to get to know each other, seminary to understand the context, and a congress to decide on a project. This was phase 1, and now we are beginning phase 2, which we call activating the network. We established for 2024 another seminary, and later we'll have another maybe congress to continue creating new projects. This is maybe a goal for a network probably like this one that you're creating here. And what all of these networks create, well, we have regional networks, we have sectors, we have areas of interest, and everyone needs to navigate among these 3 areas. In our case, we created the Office of Identification of Different Areas. This came out of the necessity of defining the works of all of these networks. Every initiative needs to identify how can they talk with other networks, with their context, and with the region. Very well. So this is all from my part. Just a few recommendations. The first challenge you have is to identify how to activate your network, and I believe that's what you're doing here within the national meeting. They're very important to keep in mind. My second recommendation is take into consideration maybe the words of Martin Cabrera. He says, there's no collaboration without trust, and there's no trust without transparency. So, this is a link that might not be easy to identify, but we need to understand that to be a collaborative organization, we need to have trust, and at the same time, to create that trust, we need to have transparency. What are our principles? What protocols do we need to make decisions, how we use resources? This will attract people because they trust the network. This ignites new possibilities. Second recommendation, keep the network open, trying to identify all the time synergies and overlapping areas with other networks. Attention to the activation model. And I write here an example of the secondary education GSED network. You are already doing all of those things. I just want to remind you of some of these details. Keep relationships in mind. At the end of the day, networks are based on relationships. This must be your priority. I believe you're already doing so. But you should never forget this. You need to create a community. You don't need to become bigger yourselves. You need to improve your relationships to increase the influence you have. The second challenge is identity. This is one of the hardest one. And this is what I mentioned at the beginning. You need to identify the Marist identity at a global level to understand how all of this universality helps us. And I include the importance of volunteers, of spiritual work, because all of this promotes our work around the world. And now, just 3 questions. The first one is, do I feel a part of something bigger than myself? You can ask that to yourselves. Do I feel part of something bigger than myself? Do I experience and desire to live my vocation to transformation? Do I understand that I can only achieve my life goals if I do it with others? And then think, how would students, alumni, teachers, and Marist brothers would answer this question? Here you have a huge challenge to identify your identity, and this would be the base of whatever you build in this network. Remember the Telegram? What can we achieve together? No one can fight life in isolation. Dreams are built together. From Fratelli Tutti. And you have this one, walking together as a global family. You're familiar with it, I'm sure. So, these were all of my recommendations. I thank you for your patience. I hope this wasn't too loud for you. And we have some time for questions. So, of course, you have access to all of this information. I still have many slides after this, but because of the time, I'll have to stop here. They told me we have time for some questions or some comments, notes, opinions. Mike, can you help me? Congratulations for your working network. I want to ask you, can you identify 3 projects that were successful? Yes, that's very easy. Difficult is to just pick 3. Just as a theoretical level, a group of experts got together and decided what will be the project. That's not enough. Not promoting participation, that results in a lack of visibility, and that never works. What does this mean? That every project should be built with collaboration. The ideas made out of a laboratory never work. We've had a lot of initiatives that are supported by financing, but never work. So, participation. avoiding expert groups that are giving proposals without really understanding the context. Another problem that I also included here was the subject of taking over the organizations. So maybe you have this great project and then someone else comes around and takes over, and this is a very common mistake that I think we should all avoid. I don't know if it was your case, but in our case it happened a lot. And building networks spontaneously without considering the relationships with the rest of the network. They might be too far away. We might not be too connected to them. We might not include them as much in the coordination of other projects. That's a very common problem of people who really want to innovate, to create. We forget that there are structures that give stability to the future, and we are creating new structures with no stability that don't have too much future. You cannot expect your network to succeed if you don't take into consideration the structure of the rest of the networks. Because maybe your project was very good, but without the support system of the rest of the networks, you won't get too far. Thank you for sharing your experience and for being so open with us. One of the opening lines stuck with me. You said we don't have to assign new resources, but we need to take advantage of the resources that already exist. However, networks need a lot of effort, especially at the beginning, and this a lot of the time required resources from meeting spaces and collaboration, and they also need a different coordination, maybe a lighter coordination, maybe something more open. So I don't know if I got it correctly. Yes, you're right. Maybe I didn't explain myself clearly. I totally agree with you that the working within a network requires new resources and some freedom of time and human resources. What I was trying to say is we don't need to build new institutions. What we did at some point was we found another objective, so we created a new organization. So yes, you have to invest resources. Yes, you have to have a lot of leadership, but you don't need to create an organization. Sometimes the structure we already have is big enough to take all of this, to take this new project. That's what I meant.
My question is similar to what have already been done. What would be a basic structure to lead a network, and how does one follow the projects of the network, the great projects? How does one follow with them? So there are different kinds of networks, so I couldn't really answer that question.
Concreto, la red depende.
The network depends on if it has other regional networks or if it's a global network that has regional networks. Maybe those small networks will be representative of different regions, and they must do reports. And it depends. If there are problems where there is no regions, but they are directly connected to institutions, what we do is to choose by continent our representative and then make assemblies. Because it depends really a lot on, and this applies to different networks. Many of these networks at the beginning are just communication, pure communication. These are ways of bringing narratives together until there are projects, but this takes a lot of time. For instance, there are projects where we have been working on for years, since 2008. For instance, in Jesuits, it works well, but it is a network that adds information, connects actors, and allows other projects to work together. But this is something that the institutions do among themselves, not the network. The thing that happens is that there's enough mandate to add narratives and talk in the name of co-Jesuit, for instance. A great debate is something, for example, is what co-Jesuit says in the same one the Society of Jesus says, and if someone from that network goes to the United Nations and they are not speaking for the Society of Jesus. So these networks favor work group on the data represent institution. These are different levels. Maybe we present a document in the social level where we present the kind of campaigns, or how do we say it, manifestos can a global network sign? In what situations and in what cases can they do it? And what is the position of the Society of Jesus? Being realistic, that question should arrive to in the General Council, and that doesn't happen because of the limited mandate. The network does not represent the Society of Jesus. I don't know if I'm being clear, but there are all problems that come in our way, and this is all trial and error. It's a very difficult question to answer because this all depends on the kind of network that we're talking about. I think this would be the last question, right?
Presentation.
You're welcome.
Mine is the last question. Can you picture or envisage a situation where Marist and Jesuit collaborate? And if so, what does it look like to you?
Muy bien, pero bueno.
Very well. So, oh yes, you have translated. Okay. Your question is very provocative. We have been talking about the universities. We talked about that yesterday in the universities of Brazil. And what I believe is that for the moment, we, and I think you are, we are in a process of internal construction. To have that conversation, we should have a very clear structure. And I've talked about our structures for an hour, but they are very weak still. And the strongest one is the second one. I don't see a problem in a collaboration. In fact, I believe, well, let me put it like this way. We have Fe y Alegría that has projects in Asia, and the structures are simpler. So there is a lot of dialogue and conversation with different religious organizations. There are about 140 congregations there. And in that sense, we have found an umbrella, an identity that goes beyond the identity of each institute. That has been a success and has worked. I think the key is to find what are our umbrellas of mission and identity that join us, and that's where Marist and Jesuits come together, and anyone else who fits or wants to join the mission. I think that the Catholic framework is going to be stronger. I don't think the church is going to lose any institutional force, at least not for now. But that's what's happened in Asia. There are a lot of Catholic foundations and institutions that are searching for an international umbrella to survive, in a way, to survive the future. Nowadays, a school that is isolated needs this umbrella for visibility, for sustainability, to learn, to renovate, to project. In a strategic week, we need this. Both Marist and Jesuits are building these networks, but there are many congregations that do not have this possibility. I think this is a very interesting future for a collaboration in the Catholic Church that will have a lot of participation in the future. And we see many networks that might not be the Jesuit or the Marist networks, but that they're working together as Catholics. And with the Pope and, the Pope and the Vatican are working a lot in that direction. You can see the economy of Francesco. Many initiatives more in the Vatican, where the Vatican is just working as a catalyst for institutions of the church that want to join in different dynamics of collaboration at a global scale. So I think that's the beginning to an answer to what you asked. Thank you for the question. This is a very big challenge for us. So give him a round of applause, please. Thank you. Just a minute, please. So we wanted to be with you, Daniel, since last year. We wanted to collaborate in the launching of this global network. You're a very great voice and authority, in fact. I think what you said helps us a lot. So I wanted to invite Brother Luis Carlos, so that in the name of the Institute, gives you something. A new applause for him, please. Very well, so in this way we say bye to our transmission, and we invite you to tomorrow have a new conference at 9:15 hour of Mexico, to keep working together. So thank you. So let's take a break. Let's take some coffee.